I'm not seeing it yet on YouTube. It hasn't changed over.
It's just a huge delay tonight.
Oh, there it goes. Now it's there.
All right. Excellent. All right. So we'll call to order the meeting of the Board of Education virtual meeting, May the 4th. May the 4th be with you, 2021. This meeting is being recorded. We ask that all participants mute themselves to prevent meeting interference and that you unmute using the *6 on your phone if you're on the phone. I also ask that everyone wait to be recognized by the chair before speaking so that people listening by phone are able to identify the person talking. This meeting is being held virtually with access by phone or streaming as indicated on the agenda. And having said that, we will get to our Pledge of Allegiance. And I will share a flag so that we can all say the pledge together. I was going to try to make that full screen, but I can't do it. Oh, what is it doing? Do you see my flag or no?
Yes, but it's in the corner of your shared screen now.
Yeah.
It looks like click the upper right left-hand corner of the flag screen. Upper left of the actual flag. Yeah, there you go. Right there.
All right, we'll go with that. I'm not going to mess with it any more than that. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you for bearing with me through that. And that will bring us to our commitment to community. And I'll ask Mr. Cruson if he'll share our commitment to community statement.
As citizens of our community, we will conduct ourselves in accordance with Newtown's core character attributes as displayed in our character tree. We will be responsible for our actions and show respect for each other. We will interact peacefully, productively, and politely. We will be trustworthy and honest and show compassion toward others. Newtown's continued success is contingent upon our ability to persevere, to follow through with our commitments, and to stay focused on the greater good.
Great, thank you. And that will bring us to our celebration of excellence. So I will turn it over to Dr. Rodrigue for this part of the meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Koo. Good evening, everyone. So the Weller Excellence in Teaching Award, the Weller Foundation, as you may recall, recognizes certified teachers of kindergarten through 5th grade, currently teaching in the public school systems of Easton and Monroe, Newtown, Shelton, and Trumbull, have developed a successful project implemented in the classroom as part of the curriculum during the current or previous academic school years, who are eligible to apply for the Weller Excellence in Teaching Award. And just so you all know, the purpose of the award is to recognize the teaching quality and innovation exhibited by certified classroom teachers in those grades. And of course, it is hoped that this honor will help encourage teaching excellence, which is vital to all of our learners. So just to give you a little bit of background, the entrants are required to submit an application to the superintendents prior to March 2nd, and then they are selected through a panel of judges in the district, in each of the districts. So recipients from each town receive a $1,000 check and a certificate of honor. So, however, before we honor this year's Weller Award recipient, I wanted to recognize 2 teachers who were our first and second runners-up, and whose projects were also well done and worthy of mention here this evening. So thank you to Michelle Fiella, our health teacher and coordinator at Reed, who submitted her project called Get Smart, a social emotional learning unit of study, and Linda Barron, our grade 2 teacher at middle grade, who submitted dinner plate words. Both excellent projects, and we thank you for submitting those, and we honor and recognize your work as well this evening. So thanks to both of you. And now, yep, a little virtual clapping. And now for our Weller Award recipient, Anne Fries, whose project, who is a teacher at Hawley, whose project was titled Creating a Social Emotional Toolbox for a Growth Mindset. She truly inspired the team who reviewed her project, and as a result, of course, she will receive the $1,000 in certificate as well. We are so proud of her work. Her very clear expectations in the myriad of engaging activities and opportunities she gave her students in order to help them build a positive mindset was truly outstanding. So thank you, Anne, for all of your hard work and effort on behalf of your students. And I know you might say a few words, so we're going to give you a couple of minutes to say a few words, but we really appreciate all the effort and hard work.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And I'm humbled by this award. It's nothing that I had intended on pursuing, but as the school year got started and there was obvious need for these little kiddos to really develop perseverance and resiliency to all the turbulent times that we're going through, it just kind of snowballed. And I would have to mention my colleagues are my inspiration. Like, not one project that I did was completely my own. It was everything that I chose to do for these kids was inspired in some way by people I'm surrounded by. So I definitely share this with my colleagues and my teacher friends, and the kids that I work with are just so deserving of wonderful teaching. So to be honored in this way and to be able to share my skills with my kids I'm humbled. So thank you, Lori, for those very kind words, and I will continue to persevere through my teaching and try to help these kids the best I can going forward. So thank you. Thank you.
Very welcome. Very well deserved. Great job, Anne.
Thank you to the three of you for being here with us. I know this is Teacher Appreciation Week, and it's so fitting that we have you here with us to celebrate you. I know that in this weird format of, the multi-screens, I just want to have Mrs. Barron and Mrs. Fiala just say hi so that your screen pops up so that we have your face on our videos. I know we all can see each other, but for anybody watching at home, they won't see you. So I'll start with Mrs. Fiala. If you'll just say hi.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Michelle Fiala here. Nice to see you all. And thank you so much, board and Dr. Rodri, for even the consideration. It's my pleasure to teach my students and take care of, along with Anne, their social emotional dimensions of wellness. It's been a tough year for everyone, but you all know Anne and we've got our students back. So thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
And thank you for being with us. And Mrs. Barron. Here I am. Can you see me? Yes. Hi, everybody. Here I am at home. It was absolutely a pleasure sharing my idea, regardless of any kind of accolades or anything. I just think that getting ideas out there, it's all about the kids. And if any of the work that any of the teachers in our district can inspire other teachers, I mean, that's the greatest gift of all. It's all about the kids, and we're all in it together. So it was
it was thrilling for me to be able to just show you a little sampling of what I do and what excites the kids and what helps propel them and love learning and get excited about it. So absolutely a pleasure, and congratulations to Michelle and Anne, of course. And it's a wonderful program. It's inspiring, and I'm thrilled to be a part of it. Thank you.
Great, and thank you for being here with us tonight. We appreciate it. Wish we could be in person. We will be soon, but it's good to see your faces. So thank you for being with us.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye now.
Bye. All right, so we will, I wanted to let everybody know that we're gonna postpone the athletic update on the agenda. It's later on the agenda tonight. We'll postpone that. Just Mr. Memoli is unable to make it with us tonight. So we'll postpone that till a later meeting. And so that'll move us to our consent agenda, and I will entertain a motion on that.
I move that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda, which includes the correspondence report.
Second.
Okay, so Mr. D'Elia makes the motion, Mr. Cruson seconds the motion. Was there anybody wanted to remove that from the consent agenda? All right, so all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, so that's unanimous, and that passes. And that'll bring us to our public participation. And I don't believe we have, I don't see anybody on the phone that might be from the public, but I will open it up for public participation at this time. If there's anybody from the public that would like to address the board regarding any of our agenda items, you can unmute yourself using *6 and address the board at this time. All right, and I'm sensing no public participation, so we will close out public participation. And that'll bring us to reports. So we'll start off with the chair report, and I'll be brief because I know we have a lot to get through tonight. But I do want to mention that everybody on the board has received an email from CABE asking for your participation in a survey for the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion survey. And it's really important that we get a good picture of Connecticut boards of education, and to have everybody's perspective, not just my perspective or two people's perspective from our board. So I really hope you take a few minutes to fill out that survey. Our next meeting will be held in person at the high school. Not only because the COVID rates in the community are going down, but we also have year-end celebrations that would be great to have in person, as well as the governor's executive orders, which are set to expire on May 20th. So that will put us at the high school so that we have more space for our meeting. And then finally, for Teacher Appreciation Week, I speak on behalf of the board saying that we're thankful to all of our educators here in our district and the lengths that they've gone to this year to help make the year successful for the students. And I think it has perhaps been the most challenging year in education ever. And I think it's worth noting that we have 3 educators here on our board, and I want to thank them, Debbie Leidline and Dan D'Elia and John Voros, who is retired, for the perspective that they add to our board and all that they've done for students as educators. So thank you for all that you do. And that concludes my report. And so I will turn it over to Dr. Rodrigue for the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Dr. Koo. First, I wanted to say again that we had a wonderful professional development day on Friday for all of our staff, focused on the dialogue and language and talking with students about sensitive topics around race and diversity. This was hosted, as you know, by members of the Connecticut Center for School Change, and thus far has received very positive feedback. In addition, in the afternoon, teachers collaborated. I think I outlined that earlier for you, on a health and wellness afternoon, a session that opened up activities to support our teachers de-stressing. And that included a variety of healthy activities, everything from walking and inside activities, artwork and reading and knitting and bicycling. They just really had a wonderful afternoon, and it was very timely and very well deserved. As you pointed out, Dr. Koo, it's been a very difficult year, and we felt this was truly needed. At the same time, Kristen Larson and I facilitated a morning session for our paraprofessionals on equity, which is one model of an SEL for Adults program developed by Second Step. As you know, Second Step is the primary program we use in K-8 for social emotional learning and growth. This same adult-oriented program is being piloted currently at the middle school by teachers. And so when this is ready, we feel it could be truly a valuable resource for all of our staff. And as you mentioned, Dr. Koo, it is Teacher Appreciation Week. Today is actually Teacher Appreciation Day. And we will be sending over baskets of treats for the staff in all of our 7 buildings tomorrow to really celebrate all that they do, all that they've done throughout the year and last year, and will continue to do for our students and families. So once again, I think this is extremely timely, and it has been a challenging year, but our staff has really risen to the occasion, and we want to celebrate and honor them. It is also Nurse Appreciation Week, and we will be recognizing all of our nurses and the outstanding work they've done tirelessly this year to ensure the safety and well-being of our students and families. As you know, a while back, we recognized the nurses right here at the Board of Ed level, but I would be remiss not to again call out the extraordinary efforts of our entire nursing staff this year, in particular with the pandemic. So again, we celebrate our nurses as well. And finally, you have the monthly staffing report in your packets. And as we have had no resignations, no new hires, but as you can see, we are now posting that the budget has passed all of our open positions for next year, from Hawley Kindergarten's teacher and school counselor, Middlegate SPED, head of Meadow SPED, Reed. We have 5 positions there, including a language arts consultant and art. And of course, the 2 new courses at the middle school, Kitchen Science and Project Adventure, as well as a math interventionist. We have positions in Spanish and SPED and Project Challenge. And at the high school, sadly, our band director is retiring, so we will be replacing him, as well as another SPED teacher. This month, the month of April, we've hired 1 building sub, 1 paraeducator, a substitute for our ASSO program, and Nelk, an employee at our employee childcare, and 3 coaches. So we are on our way, and we're really looking forward to meeting all of our applicants for all of the positions for next year. And that concludes my report. Thank you, Dr. Koo.
Great, thank you. I forgot to pause and ask if there were any questions after my report, but I will pause and see if there are any questions on either of those reports at this point. All right, no questions. So we will move on to committee reports. I don't know, I imagine we have a few.
But I'll start. I'll begin, Michelle.
Okay, Mr. Voros, curriculum and instruction.
Curriculum and instruction, we met on Tuesday, April 27th, and with us were the 4 elementary language arts consultants. Lena Silvera gave us an update on the Foundations program that provides systemic and explicit instruction in foundational reading skills, spelling, and handwriting. Patty Vitarelli explained that Foundation supports the readers and writers approach at K1 and 2 levels by focusing on word study, coding, and decoding skills. Cynthia MacArthur addressed the learning progress as students move through the grades, and Robin Navarro shared that students greatly enjoy the program and teachers have seen an enormous benefit to student learning regardless of reading level. Most importantly, there is a high degree of skill transfer, she said. Teachers have observed students breaking apart words in reading and writing utilizing the tapping strategy, and there has been improved performance on DIBELS and DIBELS NWF screening. Penmanship, interestingly enough, has improved greatly. 2 new middle school courses are being posted, the Kitchen Science and Project Adventure. Further details in your minutes that you received. Middle school and high school student supporting efforts. Mrs. Uberti stated that additional support for struggling students is currently taking place at Newtown Middle School and Newtown High School. In 7th and 8th grade, causes of failure are tied to lack of work completion and engagement. Interestingly enough, at the high school, again, work completion and lack of engagement were the big issues, and there's focus ongoing with supporting seniors identified as being in need of senior management. There was mention that in 5th and 6th grade, a number of remote learners at Reed in middle school, around 60, are being addressed, their needs are being addressed on Wednesday afternoons to connect with these remote learners more personally. More details in your notes. Mrs. Uberti, on her update, stated that the kindergarten screening is underway. The K-5 math pilot is wrapping up and selection will be announced to teachers next week. NGSS and Smarter Balance testing is underway as well. And please refer to your C&I minutes for incoming 5th grade math placement identification information. Project Challenge students in 4th grade returned to read for the first time this year on Wednesday. All the 4th grade in each elementary school. Every student attended, parents and teachers were very happy. They will continue attending the cross-district class on Wednesday through June 2nd. And Mrs. Uberti mentioned that she will give us a Project Lead the Way update on a future agenda. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then we have, I believe, the communications committee.
Yeah, we met yesterday. We continued our discussion and work on the parent involvement newsletter that we are planning to bring to the board for hopeful approval at the beginning of July, at our meeting on, I think it's July 6th is our July meeting.
Okay, great, thank you. And what else? We have, is that it for meetings, subcommittees, liaison activities? Yes, Ms. Zukowski.
I have 3, if I can just go through them, and would that be okay?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, Holly HVAC status. So there's an early estimate that will be further refined after the construction document is more finalized. Currently, according to Bob Gerbert, quote, if we do the job in one shot, schools closed, it will take 9 months and cost $6.7 million. Jeff, the construction manager, and Chris, the architect, had some brief discussion on the call if the 9 months would include shop drawings and submittals, which can be time consuming. If we did the project in 3 phases, meaning school is open, but one wing closed at a time, it will take 14 months and an estimated cost of $7.7 million. At this point, there are still a few outstanding, and that's the end of his quote, okay? At this point, there are still a few outstanding issues. For example, testing on the load capacity of the multi-purpose room roof is still underway as of the last Public Building and Sites Commission meeting. Also, there's some concern that there may be a few remaining vestiges from earlier designs. The final estimate for the referendum is expected in late June. That ends the Holly HVAC status. The joint non-lapsing fund work, I will read what I have, and then if Dan or Deb Lideline wants to add, that would be great. So this month, the work group focused on understanding documents related to the non-lapsing funds, including those specifically for the creation and past use of our non-lapsing fund. As part of that, the work group invited Board of Ed Counsel Matt Ritter and Town Council Dave Grogans to its May 3rd meeting. At the meeting, it was made clear by both councils that the Legislative Council is the fiscal authority intended within the scope of the Connecticut General Statute 10-248A. Any other group would violate the Home Rule Act in that it would violate the financial practices outlined in our current charter. The primary other takeaway that I heard was that the statute was written to ensure there were checks and balances among the groups. For example, if a district spent funds on a project that the fiscal authority did not agree with, then the authority could refuse to add funds in subsequent years. However, if the fiscal authority was not supportive to district needs, then the district could decide to spend down funds prior to the end of the fiscal year, something that the statute was trying to make unnecessary. Okay, one option is for the work group to propose a single comprehensive policy that could then be adopted as a separate policy by each affected board. The next focus of the work group will be on understanding the Newtown Public Schools accounting status and practices related to the non-lapsing fund, along with the town's accounting practices that may inform the discussion related to the potential policy. Tanya Vadas and Bob Tate will be at the June 3rd meeting. That's the end of what I've written for the non-lapsing group. Deb, Dan?
Would anybody like to add anything to that?
You did a nice job, Deb. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. The last one is the building inventory and planning work group. So the group is comfortable with the initial pass on the data model for a building inventory system. Members also talked about what should be in scope for the initial pass of work and agreed that the data gathered should be able to provide input for planning and financing of capital projects, including both CIP and larger scale non-CIP items, and for planning sustainable, proactive building maintenance. An initial database-backed prototype will be available to help the group collect data on building walkthroughs. The first walkthrough is scheduled during the next meeting on May 12th. This walkthrough will be at the Public Works building and is intended to gather inventory data and to vet the data model. Now, I'd like to expand on this concept of a proactive building maintenance. If you recall, when we were, this is not written down, but if you recall when we were doing our budget, Bob Gerbert gave this outstanding presentation about the styles of management and how it was reactive, proactive, and he was hoping to move up to the higher levels of management, which would in effect reduce the overall cost. And hopefully, you know, we can do something to assist him with that effort in the building inventory and planning work group. And that is the end of my updates.
All right, very good. That's a lot of meetings you've been attending. Are there any questions or comments on those? I will just reiterate once again that I think for the non-lapsing fund that we have a policy in place, and I would hope that that would be a good starting point for discussions. And that I know I've said that before, so I won't elaborate any further on that.
If I may,
Yes, Ms. Zukowski.
that regulation was front and center. One of the very first question, actually, I think it was the first question in our meeting with our lawyers. It was brought up by Kathy Rice. So it is, it's been acknowledged as an interesting piece of work.
Okay.
So we should be able to, it should be influential, I would hope, in our discussions.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I realize that the governing body has changed, but it should, in principle, things should remain fairly, at least from the Board of Ed perspective, things should remain similar. All right, any other groups, liaison activities? All right, so we will move on to our student representative reports. I will, Ms. Clore and Mr. Jerfy, do you have a report from our high school?
Good evening, board members. So as the school year comes to an end, everyone's really excited, and it shows as all the end of the year events are coming up. So lots of students are looking forward to things like prom. I'll talk about senior prom a little bit. So senior prom is going to be held on blue and gold, and all seniors and their dates can come. The only thing is that the dates have to be current NHS students, but they can also be from the lower grades. Tickets are on sale through the end of this week, and May 7th is the last day to buy them. AP tests started this past Monday, and they're going to continue for a little bit. There will be multiple tests given for students who can't test on the first available date, but it's really highly recommended to test on the day that's first available. And that's all I have this week.
Thank you.
I will continue. So good evening, members of the Board of Ed and Superintendent Dr. Rodri. As mentioned, this week is Teacher Appreciation Week. So at the high school this morning, the PTA brought breakfast before the advisory period for all the teachers. And I know some students are making cards in some of their classes for some of their teachers to show their thanks and appreciation for all of the work and help they got this year. Starting this last Saturday, so May 1st, the spring spectator rules for spring sports changed. So any and all fans are allowed to come to outdoor events as long as they are wearing a mask and are socially distant from any non-family members. And this includes the majority of sports, all spring sports except boys volleyball, which there can be Newtown fans, but no visiting fans allowed. This is the first time all year that fans are allowed, so students and family members should take advantage of this and support their Nighthawks that are playing sports this spring. And then Spring Unified also kicked off last week, and their first game was today with the Bethel Unified Sports Program. And then all other spring sports are continuing to play as normal and enjoy their seasons. Students at the high school who become fully vaccinated, so 2 weeks after their second dose or 2 weeks after their single dose, if they got the Johnson & Johnson, can send a copy of their vaccination record to the school nurse or the health office. And after they do that, if they get contact traced, they will no longer be required to quarantine. The students who are fully vaccinated and exposed to a positive case at school, they'll still be notified of their exposure, but they won't be required to quarantine. So I think this can be very helpful for the events at the end of the year, because I know some students have worried in the past about getting contact traced before some of their games or important tests, but now if you have your vaccination record, you won't have to worry about that. So that's definitely nice. So college decisions were unexpectedly pushed back this year because of the pandemic. So usually it's May 1st, and most students did make their decision on May 1st, but some universities postponed the decision day to May 5th. So some students haven't decided yet, but this week has brought in a lot of wavering and back and forth of students making their final decisions of where they're going to attend next year if they plan to continue their education in college. So it's definitely an exciting couple of weeks, because you can ask all of your friends and all of your classes and hear their plans for the next few years. As Rochelle said, this is the first week of AP week, and I just wanted to mention something new this year is that we're able to do AP testing in the cafeteria, so we can test more students in one room. Usually tests are split up by last name because you have to be spread out, so you can't fit everyone in one room. But like the math tests, we're actually able to fit all of their students and another math class in one testing room because we're able to use the cafeteria this year because there's no lunch being served. So I think the teachers and proctors are very appreciative of that because it requires less proctors for each test. And then lastly, Rochelle mentioned senior prom, but some of the junior prom plans were finalized in the last couple of weeks. So their junior prom will be Friday, May 21st at Dickinson Park in Newtown from 5:30 to 8:30. And unlike senior prom, only juniors are allowed at junior prom. And that concludes my report for tonight.
Fantastic, thank you. Do we have any board member questions, comments? I know you mentioned that this past week it's been the final decision week. I was wondering if you two would be willing to share your plans for next year.
Sure. So I will be attending a UC Berkeley next year, and I'm going to be studying probably biological sciences, but I'm not completely sure yet.
And I'm going to Clemson University, and I'm majoring in.
Great, thank you. That's fantastic. We're glad to hear it. Good luck in your endeavors. We still have you for another meeting or two, I think. So, but that's great to hear. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I know Mr. Delay has his hand up, but I think I want to get to Mr. Willis because I hear him.
Yeah. When is the CAP schedule being published?
So I think. Oh yes, I think Dr. Longabuco. So this week is the. I was talking to my capstone on Monday, so yesterday, and this week is the final week that they're finalizing the schedule of which teachers are going to each capstone final presentation. And I know they're starting May 17th or 19th. And I think I will talk to Dr. Longabuco about getting a schedule with links for you guys to attend some of the presentations.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Mr. Delia, did you have a question or comment?
I didn't hear Ms. Clare's major.
I'm majoring in engineering.
Good for you. Good for both of you. Congratulations on your success. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, fantastic. Any other questions or comments? No, okay. All right, well, thank you for the report. Hope you stick around. We have some other items coming up that you could join in on. But I think that'll conclude our reports and bring us to our presentation. So we have a special guest here this evening, Fran Rabinowitz, who is Executive Director of the Connecticut Association of Public School Superintendents. And I know she is a powerful advocate for our schools. I've seen her testify with the legislature, and she commands respect in the room, and I love to watch it. We're privileged to have her here to share with us the CAPS blueprint for transforming our schools. I know there are 30 talking points. It's a comprehensive list. We have some time constraints, so we may not be able to get to all of them, but I look forward to hearing. And I'll let Dr. Rodriguez, I know you may want to give us a little introduction as well.
Well, I just wanted to say, first of all, that Fran is our group's advocate and attempts to move many mountains at the state level, and we thank her for that. And since the inception of this document, which I think is truly visionary, Fran has been talking to districts about it, the effort that went into its design. So we thank her for being here tonight.
Well, Good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for that lovely introduction. And it was a pleasure. I was really happy I came early to your board meeting. It runs so very, very well. And it was a pleasure to see it and to hear from the students and teachers. Just congratulations. I really do believe that districts that move forward successfully have wonderful boards of education that work very well with their district leader. So thank you, and thank you for inviting me tonight. And thank you, Lori. I've been in many area meetings with Lori and many meetings, and people sit up and take notice, Michelle, when Lori talks about what is going to happen in Newtown on any of the areas that we happen to have been going through in the last year and a half. Many thanks to all of you. It's just a pleasure to watch a well-oiled machine. So thank you. And I am aware of time constraints, and so I will take you through a macro level. I'll be happy to answer questions or come back at any time to talk more about it. But I do understand you have a million things on the agenda, and I'm just happy to be able to talk about the blueprint. So the blueprint began 3 years ago, and it began because in 2018, the legislature passed an ECS formula that left 95 districts out in the cold, pretty much. They were not going to receive any additional dollars. And so it was kind of in response to that. And I have also been an urban superintendent. I was in Bridgeport for 3 years as superintendent, spent most of my career in Bridgeport, and I was superintendent in Hamden. And I also worked at the State Department as associate commissioner, and worked very often with alliance districts. And I do believe that, certainly alliance districts and our more challenged districts certainly need equity in funding. But I'm tired of robbing Peter to pay Paul. I think that the pie just has to get bigger. All of us need money to run education in the state of Connecticut. And for the last 30 years, our state has been funding somewhere between 39 and 41% of the cost of education statewide. They have not moved off the dime on that. And what has happened is they just move the money around. And so I know, and you know, that Newtown can be on the losing end many times, as can many other districts. And my feeling is none of us can afford that. And so we were pushing for a plan that goes through for 15 years and raises ECS every year by 2.5%, and also looks at the foundation level, which is somewhere around 11,000 right now, while it costs somewhere in the area of about 18 to 19,000 on average to educate a child. The 11,000 doesn't make any sense. So we were pushing for changes in the foundation over the 15 years, and we are pushing for 2.5% increase every year. And we're just saying, quite frankly, it's time to make the pie larger. Most states are paying half of the cost of education statewide. And as I said, Connecticut's been stuck at 41%, between 39 and 41% for the last 30 years. It's time to move. It's interesting because when I presented this, there are some that feel it's just not aggressive enough, that we should be asking for more dollars. But the fact of the matter is, I've been around for a long time, and I do believe in being realistic. And this is a realistic amount that could move forward. We're also asking that the ECS dollars be committed for 3 years. The state commits lots of grants. And we said a 3-year commitment is really important. I sit with superintendents every week, but at least about 120 of them a week. And I know the struggles of trying to put a budget forward and plan a budget. And it's doubly hard, triply hard when you don't know how much money is going to come to your municipality from the state. And so we're asking that that be done for 3 years. And we're asking that in the 3rd year, that the legislature let the municipality and the school districts know by May how much ECS dollars they will be getting. So that began the whole discussion. ECS was where we were going. And then we realized that, for years, there's been one ECS committee task force after another, and it's never gone anywhere. And we realized that we wanted to look at it in the larger context of all the grants that come in from the State Department to the districts, and also educational programs and accountability. So we wanted to take a much broader view, and I'm thrilled that we did. It's a project in the works. I'll be honest with you, I thought it was such a good plan that I thought the governor would just pick it up and take it as his legacy. He hasn't done that yet, but I'm still hoping. And I'm also pushing with the State Board of Education. And I can say it's a good plan because I didn't do it. I was part of it. But we had Ted Sergi, who was a former commissioner of education, work with us for the last 3 years. And he is just gifted. He raised money to build the Connecticut Science Center after he left the State Department of Education. He was the originator of the ECS formula. He knows funding, and he knows the State Department of Education, and he knows education in the state. So it couldn't have had a better person. And he did sign on and worked with us tirelessly for 3 years. We also had a former secretary, not secretary, but a former officer in the Office of OPM, Office of Policy and Management, Kathy Gay, who is amazing on the finances. So I do think it's a good plan. And, here's the best news of all. And Lori will attest to this. I don't know anything that has the consensus of all the superintendents in the state, but this does. All of the superintendents have agreed that this is a plan that they would like to move forward. That's pretty powerful in and of itself. So it does work with the ECS. It does work with special education. And let me tell you a few things about the special ed piece. First of all, we are concerned about excess costs, and excess costs never being funded. For the last 25 years, again, excess costs has not been funded. It's only been funded at 70% and around 70% each year. If they fully funded excess costs, we wouldn't need anything fancy. We just need that funded. And, we've had a lot of collaboratives and everything else, but it's like, fund it, okay? And we're also working with our federal delegation. I meet every week with Senator Murphy's office. I'm in Rosa DeLaura's cabinet. And thankfully, President Biden is now saying that the feds need to ante up for the special ed. When IDEA was put forward in the late 70s, they said they would pay 40% of the cost of special ed. They've paid 14%. And so we're also working at that level to get them to look at fully funding it. The other piece is the special ed numbers. I'm not sure about Newtown, but the special ed numbers are rising exponentially in this state. We're at about 11% in 10-11. They're now at about, on average, 17%, 18%. And we have some districts that are as high as 25%. And they're eating, it's 1/3 of the general budget in many districts. Now, with that said, please don't construe that as, I think, special ed is robbing our money or whatever. I believe every child deserves to have whatever that child needs. But I also think that we are over-identifying in some areas for special education because we're not intervening early enough in reading, for instance, or with students with trauma. So we're working on that as well. And Michelle, you'll be happy to hear this. I've been very outspoken at the legislature on this, especially with children of color being over-identified. And so I said, oh, I can't wait for the legislative session to be done because, you work all hours of the night because, the legislators move things forward in different ways. So I was really looking forward to June 9th until I found out that I was co-chairing a special ed task force that has to have the answers for where we go with special ed by January. So stay tuned for that, but at least the legislature is looking at it and we will be moving forward. We took all of that funding piece, I came to it, but we talked about school construction, we talked about adult education, and we then looked at it in the context of education programming, which is where you get to the 30 recommendations. I heard you talk about equity training. I heard you talk about implicit discrimination, and ours has a whole piece on structural racism and discrimination. And it talks about the fact that we need more training in that, that we are, no one wants to be prejudiced, but we have these unconscious biases that we need to deal with. We also know that we have inequity in discipline, etc. And I think for many years we've admired the problem, but we haven't really moved to do anything about it. So we talk a lot about structural racism and discrimination. We talk about additional courses at the pre-service level before teachers come into our district. They ought to be well-versed in what their implicit biases are. We talk about universal preschool, which President Biden is also pushing. And I'm thrilled to hear him push it as part of, maybe this is not what a board member wants to hear, but I like hearing it pushed as part of school. Many of the European countries start with preschool at grade 3. At 3 years old and continue it on through that. I love that idea. And we're saying that there should be dollars for students in poverty, and not just in the cities, in any district where a child is below the poverty level. We talk about improving virtual learning. I'm sure you all understand that. Setting standards for virtual learning. We certainly don't want to continue on with a remote learning track, but we do believe we've learned a lot and that there should be virtual learning courses, etc. And there ought to be standards for those courses. We also know that we have to be prepared. Hopefully this is the one global interruption of this magnitude that we'll experience, but there's no guarantees. And we want to be very well prepared as we move forward. We talked about the student mental health and asked for dollars for social and emotional learning. I heard you talking about Second Step. I think that's wonderful that you're doing social and emotional learning in your school district, across your school district. I absolutely believe that it's the foundation for academic success, and we're asking for that within the blueprint. We've talked a lot among superintendents, but we do believe there ought to be a model curriculum out there. I'm sure Dr. Rodriguez, and I know myself as a former superintendent, I spent lots of dollars creating curriculum every summer and updating curriculum every summer. If there were a model curriculum that I could have used and tweaked and tailored to my district's needs, it would have been incredibly helpful. So we're asking for that as well. We're saying, hey, listen, guys, we exist in a municipality. When you cut back the municipality, you're cutting back us as well, because we're not separate. We exist there. If the municipality is cut funding, we will also suffer cuts in funding. We talk about governance, and we talk about the fact that, we need to have policies and statutory clarification, a code of conduct for Board of Ed members. Not that that's needed in your board, but there are some boards where code of conduct is essential for how they operate with each other. And we say for egregious violations of that, we should be able to remove a board member because it can, from personal experience in Bridgeport, it can derail education. And I just don't believe that that should be allowed to happen. And it just interferes with the successful movement forward. And then we talk a lot about measuring success and accountability and having public hearings about how we move forward and, and how we are using the dollars that we've asked for. Just as an aside, when we say accountability, we're also pushing for less state testing. We're talking about, we test every year, guys. It costs over $1 million per grade level every year for that testing. And frankly, I came from the time when we had the mastery test in 4, 6, and 8 and the capped at grade 10. I don't think we know any more about our kids now than we knew then. And we're doubled the amount of testing. So we're saying, why not go back to 3, 5, and 7? We can save 3 years of testing and 3 years of time and energy and dollars, and maybe put the PSAT in 9th grade, and the state pays for that. PSAT is very helpful in prepping kids for the SAT. So those are some of the pieces that are in the blueprint. The governor hasn't taken it yet and run with it. I presented it to the state board, and they asked for more information as they move to do their strategic plan. And so I'm hopeful that it will continue to have a life and will continue to advocate. But it's pretty powerful in that we have the consensus of every superintendent. So I thank you for being able to present it tonight. It really made my day, guys, to know that I was coming here to just be able to talk to you about something that is so important to all of us as education leaders. So can I answer any questions? Is there anything else you would like to know and I'm certainly available. Lori knows all my information. You can reach me at any time.
So I think you covered all 30 points, maybe.
Did I? I tried to be quick.
Yeah, no, it does cover a huge, a wide range of issues. But yeah, are there any board member questions that anybody would like to ask? Yes, Ms. Harriman Stites.
I don't think I can think of a question that you didn't already cover. So but I just want to say, I mean, all of these points are points that we have discussed, you know, since I've been on the board the last 6 years, and I'm sure for many, many years before that, other board members who have been here longer than me can attest to that, I'm sure. So I just want to thank you and everyone else who worked on putting this together and the advocacy work you're doing, because it would be a real game changer, not just for our students here in Newtown, but from across the state. I worked in Bridgeport myself for a long time, and I know the environment there. I grew up in Waterbury, so I'm familiar with an urban district as well. And I just really think that having a plan in place that really meets the needs of every student across the state is so important. So thank you for that, and for everything you and your team are doing, because it would be huge. And I do hope the governor stands behind it and makes it his thing.
I hope so too.
It would certainly be
Rebecca.
a great thing for him to do, for sure.
I think so too, Rebecca. And here's the thing, you know, at the legislature, there are over 300 education bills that move forward. And you know what? 90% of those bills were in the blueprint, or parts of them were in the blueprint. So my thinking is, wouldn't it be great if, as a state, we rallied around one plan? We're not territorial. The governor, the state board, anybody, the legislature could take it. If we were focused on this, and every year we were working through bills that related to some part of the blueprint, I think it would be so great.
Yeah, it certainly would. So thank you. Thank you again.
You're
and anything
welcome.
we can do to help advocate, I know, my fellow board members and I, we would love to do that. So thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca.
We have been known to write a letter or two.
Yeah. That's I might take you up on that.
So I know that the ECS the funding bill is going through right now. I don't know what, it's like 6423 or something.
Yep.
And it does add money for ECS funding. Is that right? And does it fulfill what your plan?
No, it doesn't, but it does add money. What it does is it takes the governor's budget and strikes that and goes back to the formula that's in place. It adds some about $4 million for waiting for EL kids and poverty. I'm not sure. There's still controversy about whether or not it will hold harmless those 95 districts that were losing money. That's still up in the air. I haven't gotten an actual affirmation of that. It's not a lot of money, but it's a lot of money to those districts, right? But it's 7 million overall, which isn't a tremendous amount. So I haven't heard yet, Michelle, whether or not that has happened, but it's not a lot of money that's being added.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments from board members? No, you've wowed us all.
Oh yeah. Well, thank you all so much, and thank you, Lori, for inviting me here tonight.
Thank you, Fran.
Greatly appreciate it. And if at any time you have any questions or whatever, please don't hesitate to get in touch with me. All right.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing all of that with us, and your advocacy that I know, helps us do our jobs as well. So thank you.
Thank you for doing the job so well. And thank you, Lori, for being a great leader. Take care.
Thank you, Fran.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay. All right. That would have brought us to our athletics program update, but we will postpone that, as I said earlier, to a later meeting. And that will bring us to old business and our action on the curricula. So I'll entertain a motion.
I move that the Board of Education approve the Applied Robotics Technology curriculum.
Second.
Great. So Mr. D'Elia makes the motion. Mr. Cruson seconds the motion. Was there any discussion or comments on that? right, sensing none. All those in favor? Aye. Is that,
Aye.
all right, so that's everybody. It's unanimous. And then I will entertain a motion on the second piece of curriculum.
I move that the Board of Education approve the Accounting 1 curriculum.
Second.
All right, same Mr. Gilia making the motion, Mr. Cruson seconding. Any questions, further discussion on this? All right, sensing none. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, that passes unanimously. And that brings us to our COVID-19 update. So I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Rodriguez.
So just a few quick updates. Currently, we're at about 17.5 cases per 100,000 in the town with a 2% positivity rate. That's the rate of cases against the number of tests. So we continue to show a decrease. So that's good news. As you know, we've moved from a 10-day to a 7-day quarantine. And that would be a 5th day negative COVID test. And this really is going to have a positive impact on the number of days students and staff are put out as having potentially come in contact with positive cases. We did have some new cases at Hedda Meadow on Friday, and we do, as a result, continue to quarantine, but it is certainly much less, as you know, than we've experienced even just before the holidays. So again, some good news there. As you know, they're getting close to approving the vaccine for 12 to 15-year-olds, and we will be hopefully offering clinics through our Danbury partners for that age group as well, just as we did for our 16 and older groups. And based on interim guidance from the state and what I sent you last week, districts will no longer need, or should I say no longer obligated, to provide remote learning as an option next year. As long, of course, and I just want to make sure that I state that it really will still depend on any emerging medical status in the state or the town, and that would be, of course, guided by the governor. However, we are working on a plan that we will have in place to prepare for those students who may still need to be quarantined at any given time next year. There are lots of details. Again, I know I've said this before, that we're still awaiting guidance from the state as to what next year will look like in terms of mitigation strategies. Dr. Koo, I don't know if you were on the call again this morning, but they are still talking about having some mitigation strategies in place. We just don't know what they will be yet. So whether it's masks or maybe some distancing still there, we'll know as the rest of the year comes to a close. And as soon as I have those details, I certainly will send that information out to parents as well, so they can be prepared. Other than that, it's good to see that we are decreasing. We hope it continues in that way. Students, again, being all in, as you hear from our students, are really they're happy is all I can say. Very happy. And that's all I have on COVID this evening.
Good. Anybody have any questions? Yeah, Ms. Herman-Stites.
With the possibility of the vaccine being approved for 12 to 15-year-olds next week, are there plans to try to do a similar vaccine clinic as you did for the 16 and up, working with the Danbury Fair Mall site or another facility?
Yes, just as we did for our 16 and older, we're going to partner with our colleagues in Danbury, and they will set it up. And they often, Rebecca, give 2 dates so that families will be notified and they can take us up on it, or go to their own physicians or their own clinics nearby.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Any other questions, Mr. D'Elia?
Dr. Rodriguez, you sent us an email, I think it was Sunday, and it talked about this education bill. And it said, I'm just going to read it. It says requires the SDE to establish standards for remote learning and to allow it in high schools as long as the standards are followed. Do you think that's something that we might be faced with next year, or?
No, so they're no longer so that was that really had to do with and I think you heard Fran allude to that this evening, that while they're not going to obligate districts to utilize remote learning because of the medical emergency, such as we've had it with the pandemic, they are looking at uses of technology and other kinds of virtual courses and things like that. AP courses, higher level courses that students might not have had access to. So they're looking at using technology and not completely removing remote learning or virtual learning or distance learning completely out of the picture, but just not as we've gone before, where it was, I get an option. I can either go to school or be remote learning, be on remote learning. That is not an obligation that we have to meet for next year.
Thank you.
Welcome.
I have another question if nobody else does.
Sure, go ahead.
Dr. Rodriguez, the nurse, Ann sent out a notice asking for cards, and I think it was Miss Klura mentioned it as well.
Yes.
If students don't submit their cards, but they are vaccinated, will they be able to provide that?
They will. So for example, again, it's optional. We can't really mandate that, but it really is in a student or a family's best interest, because if he or she does come in contact with a case, if we don't know they're vaccinated and they haven't let us know, then they would certainly have to be quarantined. Even at that point though, as long as we have documentation, you know how you get the card, then they won't have to be quarantined as a result. So it really is in their best interest to let us know and to have that on file. Just like any other vaccination, we do have all of the student records as that's typical.
And I would imagine they're kept in the same confidence that everything else is. So
yes,
parents should
absolutely
not be worried about that, any type of HIPAA or I don't know what rules.
Right. Medical records, each student's medical records is confidential.
Thank you. And in the event that they forget to send you the card, if I'm understanding you correctly, they can provide it.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, any other questions or comments? Don't think so. I think that gets us through COVID-19 for this evening. And that'll bring us to our new business, which is the first read on policies. So I will turn it over to Ms. Herman Stites for that discussion.
Sure. We have two policies that the policy committee actually looked at quite some time ago. Ms. Koo, I think you may have been on the committee when we looked at these policies. So we're just trying to get through some of the backlog, and the policy committee is actually bringing some of our older policies back to committee, since many of them were looked at even prior to Dr. Rodriguez being the superintendent. So they deserve another look, but we felt like these were two fairly innocuous policies with small changes that we can move forward quickly just to clear out some of the backlog that we've been having in policy. So the first one is policy 5145.14. on-campus recruitment. And this just relates to allowing information to be passed along to students about other schooling options. So you'll see that we added language about interdistrict magnet schools, and then cleaned up some language, and then just clarified language as far as students, families registering an objection for information being shared. Does anyone have any questions? Fairly simple. Should I move on to the next policy, Dr. Koo?
Yes, that would be great.
Great. The next policy is also just very small change. We deleted the such as at the end of this policy on gambling, policy 5145.31. Usually we don't like to list items in a such as because new things may come into play that we hadn't thought of at the time of the policy. So we just kind of deleted that language, giving examples, and left it simple. And those are the only changes.
Ms. Sikowski has a question, but you'll have to unmute yourself.
What I just said is, yeah. We don't have this policy yet. This is a CABE policy that we are amending and considering. So I have two questions about the scope of the policy.
Mhm.
I know that some of our organizations do a 50-50 raffle. Okay.
Mhm.
That one could say would be disallowed if we pass this policy. Is that because that would be considered gambling of sorts, wouldn't it?
So I'm just going to say something. A 50-50 raffle is actually not legal. So a school sponsored activity should not be having a 50-50 raffle. We can't obviously control what other groups do, but a 50-50 raffle is not legal according to state statute.
Okay. And one more question.
Yes, go ahead.
It says, I just need to get my thing a little louder. Okay. That no school sponsored event run by students or for student participation shall introduce, operate, or otherwise teach aspects of gambling. Now, would risk assessment be considered an aspect of gambling? So if we had a math class that said wanted to teach how to get statistics in sports, and then also we had a math class that taught about the concept of risk and calculations on how one might determine risk, would that be considered not allowed under this policy? Or
No, Dr. Rodriguez, I'll let you respond to that.
No, that would, I would not see that as teaching a form of gambling, because it does have its place in business and fields of study. So no.
All right. Any other questions or comments? All right. So as usual, if there's anything that comes up between now and the next meeting, make sure you let Ms. Herman Stites know, especially if, I don't know, do you have a policy meeting coming up?
Yeah, that's what I was just going to clarify. If we could have that before our policy committee meeting, which is next Wednesday at 9:30, that would be helpful.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Those did bring back memories. All right, discussion and possible action on the continuation of school activity fund account. So before we open this up for discussion, I'll just say that Mr. D'Elia suggested to me that this would be appropriate for the CFF committee to review. So, if there are any general questions that you would like them to look into, or you'd like to ask now, this is the time to do that. But I think I'm going to suggest that we allow the committee to review this before we take any action on this. Is that correct, Mr. D'Elia? I don't want to speak for you, but
Yes,
my understanding. Okay.
thank you. I just felt like this is a topic that we could cover in the CFF committee and then bring to the board and tell everybody what we discussed in brief form rather than a long discussion in the full board. And it's the appropriate, and the CFF committee is the appropriate place for this discussion, I feel.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And this is not a really time sensitive issue. Our policy says that we need to vote on it once a year, but I think, we can put that off. So I think that works fine. Does anybody have any questions or comments right now? We have it on the agenda if you'd like to. All right. So we will move on from that and look forward to that on a future agenda. And then we have the discussion and possible action on our propane contract. And before putting a motion on the table for this, I think we probably need to hear some background information. So I will turn it over to Ms. Spottis for that discussion.
Okay, hi, good evening, everybody. So in your board packet, you did have a letter from Rick, and that was regarding the bid overview. So just a brief, just to backtrack on what we did, on March 26th, we did send an RFP out. This was for a 1-year contract for propane for our buses. It also included a 1-year extension to the contract. So these bids were received on April 23rd. We received 3 vendors, 3 bids came back out of the 5 that we sent out. If you notice, you'll see Mitchell came in for the first year at $1.23.5, and the second year was a little bit lower at $1.125. East River Energy came in for the first year at $1.545. Second year was $1.475. Hokan, who is our vendor currently, came in at $1.159 in the first year and $1.177 in year 2. So just based on this letter that was compiled by Rick, you'll see that Hokan is the low bidder. I have a little display that I'd like to put up, if that's okay, just to go over the numbers and where you can see where we are in the budget for next year and how these numbers line up. Okay, can everybody see this?
Yes.
All right, so I put the 2 lowest bidders. I kind of figured East River wouldn't really be in the mix here, and it'd be between Hokan and Mitchell, although Hokan is a low bidder. In year 1, you can see Hokan is below Mitchell by almost $13,000, and this is based on 170,000 gallons of propane. And 170 is kind of a tough number to look at right now because we haven't had a normal year, I think, since we started using propane. But we're running about 900 gallons per day in a normal time period. So that estimates to be about 160,000 gallons per year. So 170 is in our contract just to cover everything that we would potentially use. So if you look down here in the column underneath the 21-22 budget, we budgeted $182,903, and that was using the current rate of $1.07 for 170,000 gallons. So you can see if we did elect Hokan as our vendor at 170,000 gallons, we would be over budget by $14,000, and Mitchell would be over budget by $27,000. For 160,000 gallons, if we chose Hokan, we'd be over budget by $2,500. It's kind of the break-even point. And Mitchell would be over budget by $14,000, roughly $14,000, $15,000. If we used only 150,000 gallons, if we chose Hokan, we'd be under budget by $9,000, and Mitchell, that's kind of our break-even point. So you can see in year 2, the 2 vendors here, Mitchell does come in a little bit lower at 180,000, again, based on 170,000 gallons. And for the total 2 years, up top here, you can see that Hokan is the low bidder by 4,600. So I just want to put that display up so you can see the 2 vendors side by side and compared to what we have budgeted for next year. Any questions about this document or the vendors or anything about the bids?
I can't see anybody, so.
I have one.
Yeah, Mr. Cruzan.
I think there's a calculation error for the year 2 Hokan. How did their price go up and their total go down?
How did the price go up and the total?
I think the year 2 for Hokan should be about 200,000, not 188,000.
Yeah, you're right. I don't know. I'll have to look at my spreadsheet. That was done on the spreadsheet, so.
I know these are a little bit different from what
Yeah.
we were sent. So
Well,
maybe-
I'm just comparing the fact that the first year is $1.15 a gallon, and the second year is $1.17 a gallon. And yet,
I'll tell you why, Dan, and this is my fault, my apology. So in year 2, I actually had it based on 160,000 gallons because that was roughly what we're using. And then when I wanted to present it to the board tonight, I said, oh, let me change year 1 to 170,000, which is what we budgeted. And that's what's in the contract. So my apologies, year 2 is a little bit off. But I mean, we're focusing on year 1 right now. So year 2 is an extension to the contract if we choose to go forward with it.
okay, I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
No, you're right. Thank you.
all right. Were there any other questions? And again, I can't see everybody on my screen. So, oh, Ms. Zukowski?
I think I read that there was a thing about providing infrastructure in the quotes. Do we have to pay for providing the infrastructure, or is that part of them getting the contract?
That's part of them getting to the contract. What we do have to do is move one of the tanks. Because the building was sold this year, one of the tanks happens to be on the railroad property. So we do have to move one of the tanks, and the town is actually going to supply the stone and the gravel for the pad, which will really be no charge to us. And then we'll move the fencing, but no, they supply everything else. So, I wanted to leave this up to the board. I just want to also mention that we've had HOCON this is our second year. We were faced with some challenges this year. Last year as well with the equipment. They did come out to fix it every time we called. I just wanted to mention that. And the first year we did have Mitchell. We didn't see any issues with the equipment. So we had them for partially 17, 18 when we only had a few buses online. And then for 18 and 19. And then HOCON came in as a low bidder for 19, 20.
So, let me ask one question, then I'll go to you, Mr. Delia. The estimate of 170,000 gallons, that's based on the experience over the past 2 years, and does that include athletics?
Well, honestly, so does include athletics, but when we originally put this bid together, going back 3 years now, we estimated we would use about 170,000. And because we haven't had one full, regular year, it's been hard to really tell where we're landing. So 170,000 will cover all of it. Have we used that much ever? No, because, last year we ceased operations in March, and then this year with the traveling situation. So, I'm looking at maybe in a year that's somewhat normal, maybe between 150 and 160,000 gallons. So again, this was estimated early on in 17, 18 when we originally went out to bid.
Okay. Mr. Delia, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you. Tanya, are you recommending that we go with HOCON?
Based on the bid, the cost of the bids, yes. They are the low bidder. Again, we were faced with some challenges, but I have to say that they did come out and they corrected, the equipment every time we called. There weren't any interruptions to the busing schedule. I think it came close maybe once or twice, but.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think there's one time we had to use a spare. But I'm not saying that can't be rectified next year. I just wanted to let the board know that we did have some issues with them.
May I ask another question?
Yes, Mr. Delia.
Did you ever have any issues with Mitchell at all?
Not for the time period that we used them, but again, let's see, 17, 18, we only used them for about 38,000 gallons. And then in 18-19, it was about 77,000. That's when the buses were starting to come online. We didn't have any problems with the equipment. You know, All Star does use Mitchell in their other locations, and they do not use Hocon. I think they did once before, but they discontinued.
Mr. Cruson, did you have a question?
I actually want to follow up because it may not have made it back to the board, but I know that there were times that the fuelers had issues with even Mitchell's equipment. The Mitchell's equipment was not flawless in its operation either. Maybe not to the same extent that I don't know what happened with Hocon because I haven't heard about that, but I know I heard that there were issues with Mitchell's equipment as well. The equipment isn't perfect, like any equipment isn't perfect. So.
Yeah, I think I've heard more about Hocon just because it's, you know, it's more relevant.
And it's more buses probably.
Yeah,
that
true.
probably makes a difference.
True.
Ms. Sukowski?
Yeah, so does the town purchase propane? And if so, when are their contracts due and who do they use?
I don't believe they purchase propane for anything. Their vehicles are mostly diesel. You know, they have the larger trucks and some gasoline powered vehicles, but I don't believe they purchase any propane. I'm not 100% sure, but I don't think they do.
All right, any other questions or comments?
Yes, I have another question, please.
Yes, Mr. Delia.
I'm sorry, Tanya, and I appreciate your discussing this with us. With the Hocon issue, I'm just kind of stuck on that. Did they run out of gas? Was there not enough gas?
No. So it was an equipment issue, and I don't, maybe Dan would have more information, but it was, not to get too technical, but it was something to do with the lever and the way the fuel was released from the nozzle. And they had to pull something and then hold the nozzle, and it wasn't fueling. And I don't know how they rectified it. I don't know if they replaced, you know, a part every time. I know there was a lot of discussion about it being the fault of the drivers not being trained properly. But then, you know, there's two sides to every story. So.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that we don't run into a situation where students aren't getting to school because there's, you know, a fueling issue, and that's what my line of thinking is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what I was concerned about too.
That happened early on, if I recall correctly. I think I remember the story that you just mentioned. That was earlier on in Hocon's time.
It seemed to be, so the first year seemed to be the winter months, and it happened quite frequently. The second year, meaning this year, it was didn't happen so much until maybe February. Definitely not as much as the first year. And again, I don't know all the details of the exact issue. I know our bus drivers were trained and they know how to use the equipment. So I'm not sure, you know, what the exact issue was.
Yeah, you summed it up pretty much the way I heard it too. It was one side said it was the other's fault, and the other side said it was the first side's fault.
Yep.
Yeah. Ms. Sukowski?
Do we have to vote on this today, or can we get updated numbers and vote, you know, afterwards?
Well, what numbers are you looking to update?
The year 2 for Hocon.
Yeah, this isn't an official document. And I can just tell you, you know, if it were 160,000 gallons that we would consume, it would be $188,000. So year 2, I based that off of $160,000 of consumption.
So that is for both Mitchell and Hocon then?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, year 1 is 170,000. And again, like I said, I don't think we'll use that much, but that's what's in the contract.
I did a quick calculation, so it was apples to apples, and 170,000 gallons for Hocon in year 2 came to 200,090.
And how much for Mitchell?
It's 191, 250.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, the difference between the year 1 and year 2 is that we will be budgeting, we haven't, the year 1 is already budgeted for, right?
Correct, yeah. And don't forget, year 2 will be going out to bid for a new busing contract.
Oh, that's right.
So that, I don't know what kind of fleet we'll be looking at. We'll definitely be looking for propane, I believe, because there are some really good incentives. Not just monetary, it's green and it runs quietly and, but just keep that in mind.
Well, if we sign, this is a 2-year contract for propane. If we were to no longer if we were to go back to diesel buses for some reason, what would happen?
Well, it's actually a 1-year contract and it has a 1-year extension.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I make the motion now?
Sure. I think that as long as nobody else has questions. Sure, go ahead.
I move that the Board of Education award Hocon the contract for propane and auto fuel dispensing equipment.
Second.
All right, so Mr. D'Elia makes the motion, Mr. Cruson seconds the motion. Is there any further discussion? All right, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None, so that passes unanimously. Thank you for that. That was a good discussion. I'm glad we went through all that.
Yeah, thank you.
And that brings us to our minutes of April 20th.
I move that the Board of Education approve the minutes of April 20, 2021.
Second.
All right, so Mr. D'Elia makes the motion, Ms. Herman Stites seconds the motion. And I think we have a couple of people abstaining. So all those in favor, aye. And any nays? Any abstentions?
I abstain.
I have 2 abstentions. All right, so those who were present at the meeting voted in favor, and Mr. Cruson, Mr. Boros abstained. So that motion passes, and that brings us to our public participation. If there's anybody on the line who would like to address the board at this time, we welcome input. If you can unmute yourself using *6. And let us know who you are and limit your comments to 3 minutes. I'm not seeing anybody unmuting. So I will close out public participation and entertain a motion for the end of the meeting. Nobody wants.
I move that we adjourn.
Mr. Cruson makes the motion to adjourn. Ms. Herman seconds. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned.
Good night, everybody.
Night. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you in person next time.